Hello! Thank you for joining me for this episode of Playbill's Stream Stealers. I'm Mark Peikert, editor-in-chief of Playbill, and today's guest is Morgan Spector, who I first met and fell in love with when he did the off-Broadway production of Russian Transport. He's done View from the Bridge on Broadway, Harvey on Broadway, Machinal on Broadway, a ton of great theater, and he can currently be seen on HBO's limited series, The Plot Against America, about one of my favorite crazy people, Charles Lindbergh. So let's bring Morgan on. I'm going to make him talk about Lindbergh with me.
All right, fair enough.
Hello, Morgan Spector. Thank you for joining me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So I remember vividly when the Philip Roth novel that the HBO series is based on came out in 2004. Because for those of you who don't know, The Plot Against America is a book and now a limited series about what would happen if eugenics advocate and fascist sympathizer Charles Lindbergh, probably not the Charles Lindbergh you thought you knew, became president, and what that looks like when, as World War II is starting to coalesce, and what America would turn into under his leadership. And Morgan, had you read the book before this came your way?
I had, yeah. And I read it in 2004, 2005, and definitely thought, yeah, I mean, I see the kind of Bush era parallel. But it was also just like just a very thoroughly and rigorously imagined book. It doesn't have, it doesn't have a lot of the typical Rothian perversion, which I missed. But there's some, but not a lot. But it's a great book, and it's a book that in the intervening dozen or so years has become ridiculously prescient, and in a way that Roth could certainly never have imagined. But when you read that book now, it does kind of blow your mind.
The very basic logline is a fascist sympathizer and populist becomes president and leads the country into dark times.
Mm-hmm. Well,
that
and
is
I think,
basically a headline.
Yeah, I mean, I think interestingly too, it's that rather than having FDR as the man to meet the crisis of the Great Depression and the Second World War, you have a different kind of leader, right? And what we're seeing now is it's not just, okay, here's an unsteady hand at the wheel. It's the worst possible, the worst imaginable leader in a time of tremendous crisis, in a time when even a great leader might make errors that would cost people's lives, and instead we have this person who's more or less just indifferent to that fact. So yeah, it's an interesting story to be telling right now.
And you play Herman, a big New Deal socialist, who is probably not going to fare well in Lindbergh America.
Yeah.
So was it hard to, because you filmed in 2019 last year?
Mm-hmm.
Was it hard to go into this world with everything going on in the world at the time, or was it a little bit of a relief to go into kind of a parallel universe?
I would say that it definitely made me, playing this part, being kind of immersed in this story, made me, I don't know, 20 to 30% more paranoid and anxious, because without this job in my life, I think I would deliberately turn away from politics from time to time, and playing this part, that just wasn't really possible. So, but at the same time, you have a place to put all of your your angst. So that's always a relief.
And where's your anxiety usually if it's increased 30 to 40%? Is it? I
mean, I moderate it. I'm on top of it. I try to find ways to dissipate it. It's not good to live with that shit. You got to get it out of your body. So, I take in as much as I can take in, and sometimes you need to go for a long walk, or drink to excess, or watch whatever I watch a lot of Dr. Pimple Popper, which I find that to be very cathartic. I don't know if you're familiar with the program.
Even if I weren't, the evocative name would tell me all I need to know.
You kind of get the picture. Yeah.
I mean, last year, finally, I was like, okay, I'm going to try this meditation thing because people have been talking about it for a couple thousand years. Maybe there's something to it. I really like it.
Yeah, I bet. No, people tend to. It seems to be good. Seems to be a good thing.
I can get maybe 2 seconds of complete empty mind at a time.
Right.
But sure, I'll sit for 10 minutes and work for 2 seconds of an empty brain.
Mm-hmm.
Why not? But also on Plot Against America, you get to work with Zoe Kazan, another great stage performer who does amazing film and TV work. Had you known each other before you played husband and wife?
Very peripherally. We'd met a couple times, like after shows. I'd gone to see a show that she was in with a friend of mine, and we'd like met after the show. And she and my wife almost worked together. She and Rebecca almost worked together, and then didn't end up doing it. But they lived near us. I just always sort of assumed one day we'd work together. But yeah, this was. I don't know. It was such a joyful collaborative experience working with Zoe. She's a writer. She hasn't directed, but I would still call her a filmmaker. She's a screenwriter, and she brings a lot to a set in addition to everything she brings as an actor, which is formidable, obviously. So it was. I mean, it was a wonderful collaboration. Yeah, and we definitely had a kind of theater ethos on that set, which was nice. It's been a while since I've done a play, honestly, so it was nice to feel that kind of sense of ensemble.
What is a theater ethos? What does that feel like?
I just mean like the camaraderie of we're in it together. We are making this together. You know what I mean? I think sometimes on TV and film sets, that develops, or you cultivate that, or sometimes it doesn't. And I just think that's a kind of, when you're, for the most part, my experience of being in plays has been, you're all there to serve the writer. There's a real sense of we're kind of in this together. We're a team, and we may piss each other off. We may not personally get along, but we're going to do everything we can to support each other on stage. And, that, I think having that sort of background, it makes you a good collaborator for any kind of project. So that felt very familiar working with Zoe.
I'm not sure what happened, but here I am.
Oh yeah, you doubled, and then one of you left.
That's just a little trick that my twin and I like to play on guests. We like it.
Yeah, it's great. I appreciate it.
Well, I want to talk about your stage stuff because honestly, like Russian Transport, an amazing play, a great cast, one of those great new group shows that make you really happy to pay attention to off-Broadway theater. And that cast felt the characters felt very lived in. It felt like a real camaraderie backstage. And that was, correct me if I'm wrong, that was one of your first big New York shows, right?
Well, it was. In 2010, I had done View from the Bridge on Broadway.
Was that before? For some reason, I always think of Russian Transport as before View from the Bridge.
No. That, but I mean, Russian Transport was definitely. I think it was. I think it was like. People noticed me for the first. They were like, "Oh, that guy. I liked him in that." You know what I mean? That's like the. I think that was the. Sort of the first time that had really happened in New York City. So yeah. But,
I liked you in View from the Bridge, for the record.
Thanks.
Well, I mean, that was your Broadway debut. What a wild way to make your Broadway debut, opposite Liev Schreiber and Scarlett Johansson, and stepping in during previews for Santino Fontana at the time.
Yeah. No, it was it was one of those. It's a completely pivotal moment in my life that was completely an accident. And a lot of shit has proceeded from that that could just as easily not have happened. So it's very, I don't know. Luck is the main driver of human existence. I don't know what else to say.
It's the moment in your life when FDR became president instead of Charles Lindbergh.
Sure. Something like that, yeah.
So I mean, because I have to talk about Charles Lindbergh with someone.
Sure.
Did you know the whole backstory about Lindbergh and his fall from grace in the 30s when he started advocating for eugenics and kind of becoming a pro-fascist sympathizer? Were you familiar with that?
I mean, I was familiar with it from the book. You know, I had read when I read Plot. That was when I really, because I'm not like a big like aviation enthusiast. I was never really. I didn't have like strong feelings about Charles Lindbergh one way or the other. But then I read that book, and you know, it becomes clear that he at the very least was much more comfortable, standing side by side with Nazis than one would wish. So yeah, I mean, the eugenics stuff, it was fashionable. People were into that. It's like
Helen Keller was.
Huh?
Helen Keller.
Yeah. I think there was a real zest for the idea that science could, with us, could forge a better world if you just, were willing to break a few eggs. And I think, a lot of the things that happened in the 20th century undermined that faith in, rationality and the ability of human beings to sort of construct an inclusive version of progress. And I think now, we're in the situation where we really need to act collectively, and that legacy is, it's to some extent damning us to stagnation because we don't trust that we can do anything together without, creating gulags or camps or, great leaps forward. And, it's unfortunate. I'm not trying to justify eugenics, by the way, but I do just, it's, I don't know. People have stupid ideas. Yeah. I think with Lindbergh, it's a little, I don't know. Maybe it's a little bit more nuanced. The America First, there were genuinely isolationist leftists in that organization, for instance, who thought it's just not worth it to fight another world war. Too many people will die. Too many ordinary working class people will die. We don't want to do it. And people came around and they changed, and but that created these weird bedfellows where you had the German American Bund, outright Nazis, standing side by side with real leftists in this one sort of organization briefly. But anyway, yeah, I'm sure there are certainly people who have come out and tried to defend Lindbergh after the show, and I have not gotten too into the his speech about the speech that we use is verbatim him, and to me I'm kind of like, that's enough, man. Like whatever else you did, you took an Iron Cross from the Nazis and you did that, and we're good. We don't need to have an airport named after you.
I mean, it's wild because first of all, I'm obsessed with these microcosms of American history that have kind of gotten swept up as we mythologize our own history. And certainly he's a prime example of that, because at the time, elementary schools called the Charles Lindbergh School were renamed. There's a huge backlash against him. Right. And it wasn't until his memoir, The Spirit of St. Louis, was published and Jimmy Stewart played him in the movie. The only way you can redeem a pro-Nazi sympathizer is if you have Jimmy Stewart play him in the movie.
Sure.
And then there was a real turn of the tides. But the thing, and then I promise I will shut up about Lindbergh.
No, please.
The thing that I am riveted by is A.J. Berg won a Pulitzer for writing his biography, the Lindbergh biography. And it came out later that Lindbergh had 2 secret families in Germany and Switzerland that were so secret that Berg didn't even know that they existed.
Wow.
Yes.
2 secret families?
2.
I guess you have to own your own plane. That's the only way to pull that off. If you can't. Maybe that's what he was. Yeah. I mean, in our story, he was just traveling around the country, seeing his other secret families. It had nothing to do with running for president.
No, it just happened.
Yeah.
He just wants to check in on the wife and the wives and kids. And
that's I think there's if we were going to have a season 2, I think that's the show. Yeah.
There we go. Well, HBO, if you are listening, I'm available. I will write The Plot Against America's Secret Families. I'm more than happy to take that on.
Shows. I think it's a very strong concept.
I mean, didn't HBO have Big Love? Like, I feel like there's a real tie-in here.
Yeah, no, that's right.
Anyway, that is enough about Lindbergh. I just love telling people about his two secret families because nobody knows.
No, it's wild. That is wild.
But I want to talk about because last week we had Rebecca Hall, who you know slightly, I believe, and I got to talk with her a lot about Machinal, which is one of the great theatrical experiences that I've ever witnessed. Like,
thank you.
The entire production was just exactly what you want Broadway to be. And I wanted to ask you.
Did you see? Sorry, I didn't. When did you see it? You didn't see it opening night, did you?
No, I saw it in previews. Early-ish in previews, because at the time I was working at Backstage magazine, and I actually did a cover story with Rebecca.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah. Gorgeous black and white photo.
Yeah.
What was it like being in the show opposite that performance that she gave? Like,
well, obviously it was an important show in my life, but it wasn't, I mean, that was, I just, talking about ensemble, like that was, it was a huge cast. It was 18 people. And Lindsay Turner, who directed it, she just kind of showed up on day one and was like, we're going to try for something. Let me just up here. Like, we're going to go for something we're not sure we can achieve. And it was just absolutely inspiring. And I mean, she sort of taught us, she was like, here's how we're going to work. Here's how we're going to do these scenes. She kind of taught us like she formed us into a company. And she forged a company in the 2 or 3 weeks that you have to, rehearse a Broadway show. And that just rarely happens. I mean, we were hungry for it. We were all ready for it. It was a great group of people, but she really built something incredible. And Rebecca was kind of our leader. She was our captain, and she has a style of leadership that I find incredibly admirable, which is that she's just very supportive of everyone around her, but also extremely exacting of herself. So she is just, she's the hardest working person in the room. And that, that too just makes you feel like, well, okay, the bar is as high as possible. This requires my absolute focus. And I think that both Lindsay and Rebecca got that out of that group of people. And yeah, I mean, it was an extraordinarily, Broadway, I don't know, sometimes it's art and sometimes it's Broadway. And I thought that was a show that was really like insisted on in every aspect of its process, in every aspect of its aesthetics, that this was going to be something that was aspiring to be art. And, it's obviously subjective whether we achieve that or not, but to be part of a process like that is, I always feel very lucky to have had that show in my life.
No, I mean, I felt lucky to have been able to see it because honestly, that really is a remarkable production, like entirely top to bottom, the design elements, the direction, the performances. It's what you want theater to be.
Yeah, it felt like that from the inside too. So it's very gratifying to hear you say that.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
Yeah.
And from the sublime to the delicious, I would be remiss if, before I wrap this up, I did not tell you how much I love, 1, The Mist, the movie, and then 2, obviously, The Mist, the TV series.
Thank you very much. I'm glad.
I have referenced The Mist many times in the last 3 months. because it is frequently felt as if we are trapped in a grocery store.
That's right. Yeah, that's very true. I hadn't thought about that, but yeah, that's very true. Yeah.
And then my final question, as always, it's my favorite question to ask these days. What are you watching?
What am I watching? Well,
other than Dr. Pimple Popper.
Other than Dr. Pimple Popper. Well, we've all started watching. There's this show called Gardener's World on the BBC, and because I live in a place that has a yard and a nice little garden, we've all gotten, and we're all sitting around with nothing to do, and it's finally nice weather. We're all like spending every day, all day, picking and shoveling and trying to make something. So at the end of the day, we sit around and look at these beautiful British gardens and think, how the fuck did Monty Don achieve that? But also, I've been watching that show Dave on Hulu. Have you watched that program?
Yes.
That show is so funny. It's such a beautiful show about like male friendship in a lot of ways, but it is also just outright hilarious. And I've just been loving that. So yeah.
And just got renewed for season 2.
Yeah, fantastic. What about you? What have you been watching?
The Plot Against America, Tales from the Loop.
Good shows.
I like them.
Yeah. I also just want to say, if you haven't watched Tales from the Loop, those of you who may or may not be watching this, watch that show, because it is, I think, it is the thing that I found the most moving and profound of this TV season, and it seems to be, as a show, kind of falling off people's radar. I'm not sure why that is, but it's exquisite, and give yourself a minute. Yeah.
And I also binged all 2 seasons of Barry.
That show's wonderful.
I, for some reason, had just kind of put it off, and everyone in my life kept talking about how great it is. And finally, I was like, fine. And of course, every time I do that face with that voice, it ends up being actually great. And I kick myself that I waited so long.
It's great. And Bill Hader's episodes are wonderful. And Minky Spyro, who did the first 3 episodes of our show, has some extraordinary episodes of Barry. You would not think that somebody could go from Barry to Plot Against America to what was the Fosse show? The Fosse show.
Oh, Fosse Verdon.
Fosse Verdon, but she does that. She's spectacular.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today. This was a delight.
It's a pleasure.
It's fun to make people that I'm huge fans of come and talk to me for 20 minutes.
Oh man, thank you. That's so nice of you to say. Thank you so much. It was nice to talk to you.
And anyone who has not yet watched The Plot Against America, do it. You've got the time.
Very cool.
Morgan, thank you so much. Guys, we are not on Monday, Memorial Day, but we will be back on Wednesday at 4:30 Eastern. Goodbye.